In the spring of 2019, Nipsey Hussle was scheduled to meet the Republican Senator Tim Scott to discuss the potential transformation investment fund called Our Opportunity. The fund was set to reverse the tide of gentrification in his neighborhood of Crenshaw in southern LA, as well as cities all across the United States. But before he could shake hands with the senator, Nipsey was shot dead in broad daylight. His tragic death has led to a sense of what could have been and how his legacy needs to be maintained. Nipsey Hussle grew up in Crenshaw in southern LA. At 14 years of age, he moved out of his parents' house to live with his grandmother and made the decision to join the Rollin' 60s Crips. In an interview with DJ Vlad, he painted a very bleak picture of the environment that he lived in, saying, "You know, riding your bike through the hood, getting shot at, your loved ones and homies that's your age getting killed, getting shot at, getting jumped at malls and like basketball, football games, high school games, whatever." Within this neighborhood, he felt the need to stick up for people he knew and loved whenever they were in trouble, and this simply involved into him joining a gang. He said, "We were just raised like, if you with me and something go down, I'm in it, whether I'm from this stuff or not. So after a while, it'd just be like, you always in the middle of some stuff, you might as well be part of it." At this moment, Nipsey was going down a pretty dark path, but a life-changing moment occurred when his father decided to take him on a trip to Africa. Nipsey's father came from the East African country of Eritrea and had to leave during its civil war. So he brought Nipsey and his brother Samuel over to discover their heritage. In an interview with Complex, Nipsey said, "It put me in touch with my roots. If you don't know your full throttle history, the whole story of how you came to where you are, it's kind of hard to put things together. That filled in a blank spot for me as far as understanding myself." And there was the culture shock that within this country, he was no longer a, quote, minority. He said, "You saw that in key positions, president, government, police. Everybody's the same color. It's a country run by its people. No racial class. Everybody feels a part of it." Nipsey's first passion was music, and in 2005, he released his debut mixtape, Slauson Boy Volume 1, which was named after the street he grew up on and gave him a strong local fan base. In 2008, he signed with Epic Records. While being signed is the dream of almost every inspiring rapper, Nipsey would bitterly regret this move. A change in management at the label meant that the release of his debut album was delayed. He felt that he could change labels, but this wasn't so easy. To get out of his contract, he had to sign an override agreement, which said that if he joined another label before 2013, then 5% of any profits would have to go back to Epic Records. This blow turned out to be a blessing in disguise, though. It forced him to become an independent artist and brought out his entrepreneurial roots. In 2013, he did something that, on the surface, made no sense whatsoever. He was now free to join a major record label, but decided to stay independent. And when music streaming was becoming the norm and record stores were closing everywhere, he focused on selling CDs. Not only was he selling CDs, he was selling them at $100 each. But the unique selling proposition of these CDs was their rarity, as there were only 100 copies. Jorge Paniche, Nipsey's business partner, told Billboard, "Some people might look at an abstract painting by Picasso and say, that's not worth $1 million. It's open to interpretation. The value of music may have been depreciated, but the fact that people were willing to pay $100 for this mixtape shows that there must be something that they're connecting with on more than a superficial level." Interestingly enough, Jay-Z also bought 100 copies of the CD for himself. As well as the rarity of his music, Nipsey was cultivating something that he would implement more in his future businesses: the customer experience. When buying the CD, you got to meet Nipsey Hussle at a pop-up store in Los Angeles, which was only open for one day. And this is the experience that Spotify and iTunes couldn't replicate. In 2015, he repeated this model with his album Mailbox Money and sold out all of these copies too. In 2017, he took the idea of a customer experience to the next level and set up his now iconic Marathon clothing store. This is a clothing boutique, except items of clothing have QR codes that you can stream on your phone and give you exclusive access to music. Speaking to Billboard, he said, "We wanted to use a model like Starbucks where there's an experience in it. It's free Wi-Fi. You can come and get some work done. It's jazz in the background. While you're sitting down, there's a ton of products around you that cater to the most likely patron that's going to walk into a Starbucks, a college student, a professional who just got off work. The model for this is having that curated experience." But more important than anything else was the location of the store. While the most sensible option would be to place the store in Hollywood or Beverly Hills or one of the other neighborhoods, Nipsey decided to situate this unique store in his own neighborhood of Crenshaw. He hired local people from within the community and particularly focused on convicted felons who had trouble finding jobs because of their backgrounds. His brother Samuel by now was his business partner and spoke about this new enterprise saying, People would come to the Marathon store from all states and countries when they touched LAX. There are so many stores, but our store became like a mecca. Me and my dad and everybody who works here couldn't believe how many people came from all places. This idea is also being implemented by Killer Mike in Atlanta. Mike got heavily involved in social activism and realized that instead of providing his community with charity, he provided them with jobs instead. In an interview, he said, "So I understood that if I became a person that could generate money to provide jobs to help communities through helping people help themselves, that was more valuable to what I wanted to see overall." Nipsey also benefited from a new tax law that classed Crenshaw and other underdeveloped areas across the US as opportunity zones. As an incentive for investors, the US government relaxed tax payments on developments in these areas. Facebook and Napster billionaire Sean Parker explained it to Forbes by saying, "Instead of having government hand out pools of taxpayer dollars, you have savvy investors directing money into projects they think will succeed." But developing these communities is a double-edged sword. The $2 billion Crenshaw Metro rail line was also in construction and linked this area directly to Los Angeles International Airport, also known as LAX. While you would automatically think that this would be welcomed by the community, it's not that simple. Building up an area in South LA runs the risk of gentrification. Crenshaw is a 15-minute drive away from Inglewood, where Dr. Dre famously rapped "Inglewood always up to no good" on California Love in 1995. As a result of the construction of the SoFi Stadium in this region, many of its renters are being priced out of their neighborhoods and displaced. One resident living near the stadium received a notice saying that her monthly rent for a 2-bedroom apartment had shot up from $1,145 to $2,725. This was also happening in Crenshaw. Angel Jennings from the LA Times, who was given an extensive breakdown on Nipsey Hussle and his fight against gentrification, reported that the construction of this new railway line has driven up home prices nearby and pushed out some longtime residents and Black-owned small businesses. In 2018, Nipsey Hussle launched Vector 90, which is a co-working space in the Crenshaw district, and aimed to tackle the lack of diversity in science, mathematics, tech, and engineering. He did this alongside a real estate investor, David Gross, who Nipsey met at an LA Lakers game. Speaking about this project, Nipsey said, "In our culture, there's a narrative that says, follow the athletes, follow the entertainers, and that's cool, but there should be something that says, follow Elon Musk, follow Mark Zuckerberg. I think that with me being influential as an artist and young and coming from the inner city, it makes sense for me to be one of the people that's waving that flag." A big part of why gentrification occurs is when only college-educated people can afford the rising rents or property prices. With this measure, Nipsey could help people in his community get well-paying jobs in engineering, tech, and science, and hopefully not get priced out of their own neighborhood. But it was in 2019 that Nipsey embarked on his boldest business move. In January 2019, he bought the entire complex that his Marathon store was based in. To help fend off the tide of gentrification, his plan was to make their neighbors their business partners. This involved setting aside 20% of the housing units for residents of the neighborhood, and locals could invest with them on their projects. And instead of just focusing on Crenshaw, he started looking at other opportunity zones too. Within these zones, he could use the same model of having Marathon stores, barbershops, fish markets, restaurants, and all sorts of enterprises, all with the model of building it from the ground up. This led to Nipsey and David Gross setting up the Our Opportunities Fund, an initiative that would develop poor neighborhoods, but without gentrifying them. Nipsey and Gross had a meeting set up with Republican Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina on how they could take this idea further. However, on March 31st, 2019, things would take an unexpected turn. Nipsey made an unexpected visit to his Marathon store. He was recognized by fans and agreed to sign autographs and pose for photos. It was here where he met a man named Eric Holder, who Nipsey knew, and they engaged in friendly conversation. But during this conversation, Nipsey told Holder that there was a rumor going around that he had cooperated with law enforcement or was a, quote, snitch. Nipsey said that he should get the paperwork showing that he had not in order to clear things up. Eric Holder returned to his car where his girlfriend was waiting for him. He told her to park at a nearby parking lot so he could eat his fries. She then saw him loading a 9mm pistol. Holder took a few bites of his food and then went back into the Marathon store. Witnesses recall seeing Holder waving a gun at Nipsey and shouting, "You're through," shooting Nipsey Hussle 10 times and then kicking him twice in the head. It was a brutal moment. And in this Marathon store, there was nobody to defend Nipsey. First of all, he didn't have security with him. Part of why everyone loved Nipsey was because he didn't think of himself as a big celebrity. And because he had hired convicted felons at the store, they weren't legally allowed to carry firearms. Nipsey's brother, Samuel, who arrived a few moments later, recalls the moment. Because of that, the man was able to shoot my brother, start running, realize nobody out there had a gun, stop, turn back around, walk up, shoot my brother 2 more times, start to run, realize nobody had a gun, nobody was responding, ran back up and shot my brother 3 more times, shoot him in the head and kicked him in the head, and then ran off. He added, "If somebody would have been there, if I would have been there, I would have shot back. I just wish I would have been there." Amidst the events, the fact that Nipsey didn't work alone on his businesses meant that they were able to continue without him, as far as the Marathon store is concerned. That's being run by his brother Samuel, and Nipsey made it so his kids were the official owners. A second Marathon store opened in Los Angeles in 2023. Vector 90 and Our Opportunity were owned 50-50 with David Gross, so he's taken this on his own and tried to partner up with athletes and musicians who want to invest in their area. In a 2021 interview, he gave a recent example of the Broadway boxing gym. He said, "It's a boxing gym on the east side of South Central, and our visible partners in it are an artist named D Smoke from Inglewood and another artist named G Perico, who is definitely a West Coast icon, and it's his actual neighborhood. They're our visible partners and are buying this boxing gym that shut down because the owner had died. So we're opening it up and bringing it back, and they're investing their own money into this fund to do it. Still, we've created a way for anybody from that neighborhood, from the east side of South Central, to also invest alongside myself, D Smoke, and G Perico." Nipsey also has since won a Grammy since his death, and his music continues to be listened to, but perhaps his vision of developing communities and his blueprint to tackle gentrification may have a larger impact. Make sure to subscribe for more.